Hello, welcome to the NewOrg Reports Zoom. What we're going to look at today is the recently updated report groupings in the main report tabs on NewOrg. So I am logged in as user Nicole Kraft and brought to the home screen. To get into reports, you'll click on the main reports tab. But first, I wanted to take you to the main files tab. On the main files tab, you'll find resources for NewOrg that should mimic the resources also available on the Baby Talk portal NewOrg resources page. With that said, a new document called NewOrg Reports Guide has been added to this tab. The hope here is that this guide will help you in getting comfortable around reporting in NewOrg and what the reports in NewOrg have to offer. It is separated into or divided by the report folder or grouping that the reports are in. We will keep this updated with any changes as the report needs change. Okay, so let's dive in. To get to the reports in NewOrg, you'll click on the main reports tab, and then over to the left, you'll see the report groupings. Within each grouping, you can click on the plus sign to open up available reports under that grouping. The report groupings have recently been updated and now include child reports, family reports, group encounter reports, mailing, program reports, and screening, assess, and goal reports. We're hopeful that by kind of reconfiguring the report groupings, we still have most of the same reports available in NewOrg, along with a few updated ones. And we're hoping that this restructure of the groupings makes a little more sense for our network. With that said, let's dive into running a few of the reports. For child reports, when I hover over the very first report available, I see that this is an events report and it's specific to encounter events. So what that means is that the report is built to pull events that have been entered for contacts in NewOrg. The report structure of NewOrg can pull from 3 different sources. An events report will pull from events that are entered. A contacts report will pull for the contact information that has been entered. And a forms report can pull for information that has been entered on the questions across a form. Typically, forms are within the events and located at the bottom. With that said, let's click Child Events by Month. I'm going to click on the report that I would like to run, and then the report will open. Once the report opens, you will see a report criteria box that you may use. We suggest 1 or 2 criteria before running to reduce the report size. Typically, that's a date range or an enrollment status. On the files tab in that reports guide, we've added a column with some suggested criteria for running. Does not mean you have to use that criteria before running, but just some suggestions to get you started. When we look at this report, Child Events by Month, and reading the description below, which is what you'll see when you hover over the report, those are the same, the description is the same. It says this report will show history for any child contact added to an event and is grouped in a month view. If a child is not showing on this report, check that the role of the contact is entered as child. So what that means is that this report is built to only show contacts that are entered as children. So it's going to take off primary caregivers and any additional family members that may be included on these events, But for our purposes, we're not wanting to see, we're running on the child. The description also tells me that this is an events report. So it is going to show not only the child contact on any of these event types within the criteria you've selected. And then lastly, in the description is a little hint to how this report is grouped. This will make more sense once we run the report. So I am going to run this report for, let's just run it for a date range. And let's go January 2021. And we'll run it for a couple of months to March 31st. I'm also going to go ahead and select enrolled status at time of event. The reason that I chose this enrolled status at time of event over current enrollment status is that we may in those 2 months have had a child contact that is exited. So their current enrolled status would be exited at this time, but we want to see those events that are applied to children enrolled. When I click find, the report begins to run. So to recap that, we opened up the main reports tab. We looked at the report groupings, selected our report, chose a couple of criteria, and then ran the report. Once the report runs, you will see a list view of the report. And then you will also be able to view a summary view. These are the two main views of the report. You have a few others, the pie and bar charts that you're welcome to look at. But most of the time we have our detailed reporting view, which is the list, and a summary, which crunches down however that report was grouped. So before we ran the report, we referenced that the report is grouped in a month view. NewOrg reports can be grouped in 2 groupings. If you are ever wondering, the original grouping of the report, it is the larger kind of bolded subtitle. That's the main grouping of the report. And if there is a secondary grouping of report, it will also be bolded, a little bit smaller, but you'll see it just under the primary grouping. So for this report, I can see that we are grouped by the contact's name and then by event month. So child events by month. In the list view, you'll see all the available information in the report headings. And you can scroll down. If you wanted to go directly into one of the events, you can click on the magnifying glass. A tab will open and you're taken to that source or the event because this is an events report. Had it been a contacts report, we would be taken to the contacts. And a forms report, we're going to be taken into the forms and surveys tab. Again, the list view shows several different columns and headings per report, and the summary view crunches the numbers or takes the report groupings, the two main groupings of a report, and summarizes those numbers. So we know the report is grouped by name, and here is the summary for that. Jason Adams has 1 count. In this case, that means 1 event. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can also see the primary and secondary groupings together. So the report is grouped by name and then event number. We see that Jason Adams on secondary grouping of March 2022 had 1 event. Okay, let's look at another version. That was the child events by month is a great report to look at just the child events in general, and it includes all types of events entered. Enrollment status at time of event, keep in mind that that is looking, the system is looking to see that a child enrollment event has been entered for the child. So if you were to click enrollment status at time of event and a child isn't coming up on there that should be, double check that they do in fact have a child enrollment event entered under their contact. A couple of other reports underneath the child reports are some forms reports. These are the forms within that you can find within the encounter events. So I am going to pick the personal encounter FCI details. You can hover over it, read a little bit about it, decided I'd like to run it. So I've clicked the report. And now the report criteria box is going to pop up. In this criteria box, we see just a little description around it. Says list values entered within the multiple pages of the encounter personal with FCI form. With FCI, that means family-child interaction. It was formerly parent-child interaction, and we've just updated the verbiage there. This may be used to look at changes in scaled scores over time. If you do not see values, check that a personal encounter form has been completed in the event. So this is a forms report. It's going to pull directly from the form within an event. This report is grouped by assigned to. Assigned to means the user that the event or the form is assigned to. And then it is grouped by child name and question 1 on the form. To give you a little background around why that is because on the personal encounter events in NewOrg, we know that typically the primary contact on that event is mom or the primary caregiver, whoever's in the large rectangle box of the contact view. And sometimes that's not the child. So therefore, to ensure that we're looking at the child that the form belongs to, it is grouped by the question 1 in the form, which is the child dropdown. Recommendations for some criteria here would also be a date range. We'll look at another forms report in a minute that we know is assigned to the child. So therefore we can kind of view by enrollments. But in this particular case, since we know that the mom is not attached to the enrollment event, we really use the form date range to pull apart the forms and then view for the different child contacts. So in this report, after it's run, I can see that it is grouped by assigned to, which is me, and then question 1 of the form. Question 1 being child name dropdown. In the list view of this is a big one and a great form to download to Excel and really dig into some of the answers across your personal encounter forms for your agency. If I were to pull over to the right, I can see all of those questions in the headers across the top that are on the personal encounter forms. If I go to summary view, again, I have it summarized by the groupings of this report. So event assigned to, I see 3 forms assigned to Nicole Kraft. With a further breakdown, 3 forms assigned to Nicole Kraft with a secondary grouping of child name or question 1 in the dropdown. We see Anderson Williams, Charlie Williams, and Taylor Patrick. If I were to click on the magnifying glass, I'm going to be taken to the Forms and Surveys tab for this contact. I can find the form and open it or use my filters to pull out the form that I would like to view, either by date, event type, or name. So here I can see the 2 forms for Charlie and Anderson. If I were to go back, I'm still in my report tab up here. And the additional tab that is open is because I clicked on the magnifying glass. So I see Charlie and Anderson probably in the same family. If I wanted to view the actual form, I would then click view or edit and could make edits as needed. Here is the child one dropdown that we were talking about. So this one belongs to Anderson. I've made a note up here that it belongs to Anderson, and the other form, I am assuming, belongs to Charlie. And when we open that, we see the subject. And the subject is a handy place that you can actually, is visible in the event itself and can save some clicking or can aid when copying forms over if you like to use that feature. So now I'm going to just kind of cinch up that report grouping. And now let's look at the family reports. Similar to child reports, we have information. Most of the family reports are events reports. So these three family reports are family events by month, family events by name, and family events by agency. Within this, you also have a contacts report that will show you just general contacts across the system. Let's view family events by month. The difference in this report as opposed to child events by month is this report is built to show all roles, not just child roles. So when we click on it, it's going to be grouped more in a family view and then month. Close out some of my tabs here. Family events by month. Our description says this report will show you all families' event history and is grouped by primary caregiver and then by month. You can use event type to view by individual events if desired. What that means is if you leave a criteria box open, then the report will report on all items in that box. If you'd like to break it down by a certain event type, like just personal encounters, or if you hold control, personal encounters, newborn encounters, and prenatal encounters. So again, I held control to make a selection or deselect an item. Then it will run for just what you've asked it for. All right, let's go ahead with that. Let's say we're going to do family events by month and look at these three event types. And maybe to break it down a little more, we'll do from January to March 31st and find. Once I click find, now the report is going to report back what we've asked it to. It should report back the three different event types we've asked to see, which are personal, prenatal, and newborn encounters that were entered for all contacts on the system from months of date range of January 2022 to March, the end of March 2022. It is grouped by family name and then month. We click the summary view. It's just going to summarize it. We can also see, and similar, I believe the child events by month also had these columns. If there is a form in the event, there's a link to that form that is interactive, meaning you can click on it and be taken directly to the form in that event. So you'll see that a lot across the events reporting. And then you can also see the form name. So if there are multiple forms in an event, like down here with Jenna Williams, we can see there are two form links, and then we see those separated. It looks like an encounter, two personal encounters. If we were to look into that event or those forms, we could go directly to the forms, or we could click on the magnifying glass next to the event line and be taken into the event where I can see one form probably belongs to Charlie and one to Anderson. I also see that on this particular event, there are 2 contacts added. If I were to look into that further, I would see Charlie and Anderson. Scroll down and we can see the actual forms. So those overall general events reports are handy, just to give you a glimpse into what's going on, whether it be by event type or by event assigned to. You can run them just to look at events assigned to you if you choose. And then the differences between the 3. This is the events by month view. Let's look at events by name. That's going to be grouped by the primary caregiver, and then have each family member and events that they've belonged to over the criteria you've searched. And then events by agency will be grouped more by family name and then within your agency. So we'll take a quick look at each of those. So events by name. Let's do the same criteria. I shouldn't have much, so I'll just do the event type, click find to run them, and we'll just take a quick look. When you're reporting, the report will load. If you see it blink, it means that you can begin to look at the report, but you won't be able to click on the magnifying glass or dig into the sources until the report is at 100% and has completely ran. So here's events by name, where we can see it is grouped by primary caregiver and then the members of that family in the events that belong to them. So, and then family events by agency, it's just going to be the same information grouped in a different way. So whatever your preference is would be the report that you would choose. And this one just tells us that this report is grouped by primary caregiver and then by date. So let's take a look at this one, and I'm going to cut the load time a little and give it a date range. I did those same events just so we could see or view these similar reports. So we've looked at a few events reports, a forms report, and next let's go ahead and open a contacts report just to get a full idea of the 3 different reporting types. So with this family events by agency, we see that it is grouped by primary caregiver and then by date. And includes everyone in that family. That is a contact in that event. So again, if you wanted to see the event, you would click the magnifying glass and be taken to the source record where we see the personal encounter and those included in that event. All right, group encounter reports. We have a form report, and that's that prep form within group encounter events. Group encounter details is also a forms report similar to the personal encounter details. It just has the questions answered on a group encounter form. Group encounter attend, let's go ahead and open that one. So what this one is pulling is going to be, it's specific or built around one event type, meaning it's not going to look at that whole menu of events. So it's already decreased in size as far as what the report is going to look at. It's only going to look at events that have been entered as a grouping counter. So there's no need to select that event type. If you're ever wondering about the filters that are included behind the scenes in a report, in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see the filters that are included on that report. Some of the broader events reports won't have as many filters, and some of the specific reporting will have some of those specific filters. For example, this report is built to look at type of group encounter. So that part is done for you. And I'm just going to click Find to Run. I don't believe I have a whole lot of group encounters entered, but we'll take a look. When you're running this one, you can use the event assigned to if you want, but typically there is a lead home visitor that's assigned to a group encounter event. And then a lot of the families are across your agency. So when running, just keep that in mind. If you're wanting to see just those families tied to you or all the families that came. This brings up a good point of the null. Anytime that you see the word null in a report grouping in NewOrg, it means that the report has not found a value in the grouping. So for this particular report, it says this report will show you a list of contacts on a group encounter event and the form associated with the event. If I wanted to see how this report was grouped, I can see that it is grouped by the activity chosen and then date. So what that means up here is that an activity was not chosen in that event. If I wanted to dig further in to why the null or even to update the null, I could click on the magnifying glass to be taken directly into the group encounter event, where I could then update the activity field. So we see that activity field there was blank. If that were updated and we saved, then it would no longer be under the null. Okay. Same thing, there's a form associated. This form, because there's one form in the event, will go to the same form within that event. Okay, and if we were to crunch the numbers by the groupings, grouped by group encounter activity. So the summary view is also good for telling or helping to reflect the groupings of that particular report. So 16 over the time range selected, which we didn't over time. We had 16 group encounter activities of community outreach screening. Okay, mailing. This report grouping, there have been no changes to this. This is if you have email addresses entered, and it will help to pull different email list. Program reports. So some of those more detailed reports in that you have an enrollment to exit report, which is going to calculate if a contact has an enrollment date entered and an exit date entered, and then give you the date between those or the time served. We have some of our children, caregivers, and families served over date range reports. IELG code reports. These are going to pull off of the question on the encounter form that specifically asks about IELGs. Referrals. This report is specific to the referral event, meaning that it is only going to look at that event type. And then you have some SID and SIS reporting here, and that's going to pull data fields that will help with any SIS information needed to input. The two systems, NewOrg and SIS, don't talk to each other, but we have some report aids. And if those data values are in, it can be very helpful in utilizing for SIS. And then we have uploaded documents, which let's take a look at one of these. It's a different type of report that I believe will be utilized more in the future, especially as those programs begin going through the quality confirmation process, monitoring, and things like that. So where you can upload information either on a contact level or an event level, you can pull a report to view in one setting what has been uploaded. So here I have pulled the upload docs on events. You could do a date range or a type. I'm just going to click find so that we can see what this looks like. And then on the contacts level, it's going to pull those contacts and show you different documents uploaded to the contact. So I can begin, as soon as I get that blink, I can begin to view the report. And we can see all the information across documents uploaded to an event. So here I can see some documents that have been uploaded to a group encounter event on 6/9. And you can see that each of those is a hyperlink to then actually look or download what was uploaded. Okay, if I wanted to jump into the event, I could click the magnifying glass. I'm taken into that group encounter where I see up here the 6 files that have been uploaded. So that's going to come in handy for the different screening events, or if you have things that need signed and you've uploaded them to the event. We can see when there are no documents. Okay, and on contact base, all those documents, for those of you that have gone through quality and you uploaded a whole bunch of documents for quality, this is where you would then see those documents that were uploaded under your agency contact. And you can see I don't have any uploaded to a contact. Okay, and then the last report grouping is called Screening, Assess, Goals. So here we have some of the different reports. These first ones are in the adult screening event. Then we have our FRA dates. That's going to pull just reports. It's just going to pull the event, the FRA event, the Family Resource Assessment event. And then you get into, in the reports guide, we call this a logic report, meaning that there are some calculations built behind it. So it's going to show you the different scores on an FRA form. Let's see, and then in the description, that FRA form we know is that longer one. It said it will display questions 1 through 81 of the FRA form, or Family Resource Assessment form. So down here at the bottom, you can pull over to see all those different answers on an FRA form. To be taken to the FRA form, you would click the magnifying glass. And then the summary, this is the one that calculates. So this is more the logic one than FRA scores. FRA scores is just going to show you the scores that were entered across all questions. Score sums, that's going to sum up all of those numbers. Same with the Piccolo scores sum, it's just summing it up. Or the eligibility scores. And here we see it's taken each section and given us scoring totals. Summary view goes into those scoring totals. Then you have your goals reports. These are reports based off of the IFGP event or individual family goal plan event. And then your Piccolo reports. This report will show scores from the Piccolo form, which is a form within the parent-child assessment event. And then your screening reports. We have some event reports that are just going to show you screening assess history. Let's click on that one. This is a report that I believe a lot of people utilize. And it just takes that number 6 event in NewOrg called Screening Assess History. So the report is already filtered to only look at that event type, Screening Assess History. It's going to remove any voided events or contacts. So we're just looking at that event type over whatever other criteria we might pick. So I'm just going to click find. I won't have a lot. Some of your agencies that have been using NewOrg for some time will definitely have a lot more. And so you'll want to use a date range or type or enrollment status criteria. When we run this, we can see that the report is grouped by contact and then screening type, and then begin to look at some of the information. Summary view just breaks it down, and I see that Wednesday Adams over the report time range that I reported on has 1 developmental, health, and social emotional screening event entered. If I wanted to go into the event, I would click the magnifying glass and be taken into the event for any updating. And then that is a screening events report. Down here are just some of those different forms within the screening event. So there are forms report that's going to show you or display the information that was entered on that form. Thank you for taking the time to view this video and look into some of the different reporting features of NewOrg. And please keep in mind on the main files tab is where you can find the NewOrg reports guide. We look to have more of these Zooms in the near future where we'll dive into each report grouping and further look at the individual reports. If you have any questions or would like to meet individually or as an agency for NewOrg TA or NewOrg assistance, we would hook up Zooms and look together and look at anything or drive it anywhere you guys would like to go. So you can email me at Nicole, NICHOLE @babytalk.org.